Hi, you're listening to When Isabel Met Aviva, a podcast about rom-coms, female-driven screenwriting, and how to break into the entertainment industry. I'm Isabel.
And I'm Aviva.
And thanks for listening to our podcast.
Okay, so we're back.
How
are you doing?
Wait, is this the first episode of season 3? Or no,
this
will be
is
the
episode
second.
2 of season 4.
Oh my gosh, season 4. Wow, I totally skipped over season 3 in my mind.
But what's been going on, Isabel?
Personal and work life has been insane. I will just make one comment that this federal government has been extremely frustrating and has affected my job. But we got our funding back, so that was nice. But it's just I've just been so busy with work, which unfortunately has meant that I haven't been writing. So I'm at like the end of my rom-com though, so I'm just kind of like frustrated because I feel like it's the most fun part to write. You know, this is the part where they're kind of falling in love and then something bad's gonna happen and then it's the end. And so I'm like, I have all this excitement to want to write, but I can't find the time. And that's like
you're at the fun part.
I know. I'm like, this is the fun part. Why can't I just like sit down and write it? But it's like hard when you kind of like, you know, you have to also really get into the mood for it and the mode and like I don't know. So I'm hoping to be able to do that tomorrow and Saturday. But I'm excited because it is like the last like 20 pages or so. So
which rom-com is this? The one you're rewriting?
This is my Indian rom-com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's really exciting. I'm excited to read the new version. So
what about you? What's been up with you?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have been writing, which is progress from a few
from a few episodes ago when you were not writing.
I've been like final draft isn't open yet, but I count it as writing. I've been outlining a new rom-com that's like a witchy rom-com. Like I always want to do something with witches.
That sounds fun.
So it's like a witchy knitting rom-com. That's what I've been working on. So I have like I'm doing like the note card method. So I have like the majority of the note cards done, but I still think I have to spend maybe like another week, like really plotting and thinking about all the like the midpoint and all of that. So but at least I've been creative somewhat. So
can you give us something about the like how the knitting and the witchiness like combines? I'm kind of curious.
So originally I just wanted to do a knitting rom-com and I was thinking very like Hallmark, but then I thought, what if I made it like magical knitting? So this witch who like doesn't want, I'll just share with everyone. I don't think anyone's gonna steal my idea. I used to be so paranoid about this kind of thing. I don't know. This witch like wants to, it's still developing, so open to notes, but this witch like wants to leave behind her magical past because her family's kind of crazy, and she goes to the city and she's trying to like live among the like muggles, if you will. And then she inherits her like grandmother's knitting shop, so she has to like go back home. What else should I share? This is the first time I've really talked about it out loud.
I really love the idea of a witch like wanting to like leave her magical life behind and going to like try and like, I don't know, I love the idea of it being set in like New York City or something, right? And she's kind of this like witchy girl who still has some of her witchiness, but she's like letting it go. I would watch that.
And then I didn't share the most, I'm just not used to talking about it. So I think it's going to be called The Sweater Curse, because so when I knit my first sweater this past year, so I'm like kind of an intermediate knitter now, I guess. There's this like legend in the knitting world. This is where the story was inspired, where like you're not supposed to knit your boyfriend a sweater before you're like married because he'll break up with you. Like that's like a fable in the knitting world. Like because I know
someone who knit a sweater for their boyfriend and they totally got broken up with.
I know it's someone probably really bitter. I personally choose not to believe it, but I did when I was like learning to knit this sweater for my boyfriend, like multiple people at the knitting shop who are like avid knitters were like, are you sure he's worth it? Like
I had no idea. I love that. I know this information now.
So it's literally called The Sweater Curse. Look it up. There are Reddit threads about it. Like it's a thing.
Oh my God.
So anyway, this guy, so I'm thinking like the love interest of my witch protagonist experienced the sweater curse, and that his now ex like broke up with him after gifting him a sweater that
Okay.
she made, and he like he doesn't believe in magic or know about magic, but he like learns about this fable and like wants to investigate or something, and like wants her back, or like and then he falls in love with the witch instead. But I'm still figuring it out.
Okay, I like this.
You know, this is supportive. This is therapeutic. But yeah, other than that, yeah, so I really want to like get that started and open final draft eventually. It's been like a week of rejection still. So I have an inspirational quote that I thought we
Ooh,
could
okay.
read together.
Always in need of an inspirational
Yeah.
quote.
Because well, this is good news. Like I got, I was doing some contests recently, and I got into the quarterfinalists of Table Read My Screenplay, Cannes edition. So like if I won, which I knew was very unlikely, I would like be sent to like Cannes Film Festival. So I didn't make the semifinalists, but like I'm not even that surprised. And then
Hey, but you
last
made the
night,
quarterfinalists. Like
yeah,
that's still
I
pretty
should be
cool.
excited about that.
Yes.
And then last night, this isn't confirmed yet, but like I think I didn't get into this like filmmaking fellowship, but it hasn't been confirmed yet. But I was really bummed out. But basically, my friend got an email about it, but I've gotten no email about it. Like she made it to the
Okay.
semifinalists, so like TBD, but it doesn't seem that promising.
Oh yeah, that's always so hard when you know that somebody else
I know. She was like,
got
"Did
the
you get an
email.
email?" And I was like,
No.
I thought that I would read a quote. You might know it, by Theodore Roosevelt. And it's like Brene Brown. Do you know her?
Yeah.
Yeah, like she's shared this quote, and it's called like Man in the Arena. So I'm just going to read it. It's about just like, it's good to put yourself out there, even if you're rejected. Okay.
That's
Okay, it's kind of a long quote, but it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there's no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. So I'll put
I
it in the
like
show notes. So yeah, we got to just keep going into the arena, So.
Yeah, no, I have I have like what I would call an indie. I don't know if I would even say it's going to be a rom-com. It might just
Yeah.
be an indie drama romance that I really want to write, that is about rejection and about like,
Sounds good.
the like pain of being rejected by someone that like you love. And it was just making me think of that's sort of how I imagine the sort of moral of the story is like, but would you rather live your life never knowing by never putting
Yeah.
yourself out there, or
Yeah.
know but feel like the pain? Like I feel like that is
It's
such a dilemma in life, but it's also life.
It's also life. And yeah, like I've mentioned her before, but there's like this Instagrammer I follow she has this rejection therapy like system she talks about all the time. And it's really just about how, yeah, like rejection is like momentum. And like, but it is like, it's always very illuminating when I'm rejected, especially like multiple times at once. Cause you just think you like really learn about your limiting beliefs, and like, I don't know. It's illuminating. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, hopefully I'll have good news soon, and it's okay. But oh, before we introduce our guest, I also wanted to ask you about the Oscars. This might like deserve its own episode, but did you watch? And we've texted about this, but for our audience.
I didn't watch. I was pretty busy that day. But I saw Honora last weekend. And I haven't read it yet, because you told me you read it, right? You read it, but you haven't seen it.
Yeah, and I have not seen it.
Okay.
And what did you think of Honora?
I have such like mixed feelings about it, because I did enjoy the movie. I thought it was beautiful. I thought the acting was incredible. I thought it was a good story. But I don't know. I think what I texted Aviva is that I would be so curious if we could like interview somebody who, scores. I would just actually really
Yeah.
genuinely love to know how they determine what gets an Oscar, because I don't know that I would say that that's like an Oscar. I mean, I guess I would say it's an Oscar winning movie when you think about what the Oscars like say is an Oscar winning
Yeah.
movie. And but I do think that like it was a good story. I just have problems with the amount of sex and nudity and like what to me feels like the like constant and continuation of Hollywood and men like fetishizing young women. And I just feel like that continues to be something in Hollywood that we just like glamorize as Oscar winning indie movie. And that was like something I just felt like I had a lot of moments in the movie where I kind of just started to feel like gross, like icky. Like I'm just kind of like, why am I continuing to see this like scene? Like why is this going on for so long? But that was also my other like biggest critique was like there were quite a few scenes that just go on way too long. That I was just like thinking to myself, there's at least twice where I was like, how is this scene still going? Like this is like the longest scene ever. But I'd be curious because I was listening to some other podcasts that were talking about this, and and both of them mentioned the same thing, and I was like, okay, I'm glad that it's not just me, but like, yeah, there was definitely
Yeah.
quite a few moments where I was just like the pacing, like I feel like it goes really, really fast in the beginning, and it's like really exciting, and you're kind of like you're really into it, and then it just gets really slow through the whole like second act, and like I mean, I did like the ending. Like I thought it was a powerful ending and message, and I understood all of that. But then I just kind of was like, I don't know. I just kept having this weird feeling that don't know that I've done enough research yet, but I haven't quite heard anyone else talk about. I just keep thinking of the film American Beauty. Like it reminds me of
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and like that's what was like kind of bugging me in this way that I couldn't quite describe other than to say that it reminds me of seeing that film where like everyone's like, oh my god, it's so beautiful, but then it's like when you're watching it you're just like, what, like, so you're telling me I should feel like enamored with this like 23-year-old woman's body that we just keep
Yeah.
like using certain angles on like I don't know, that's
Yeah.
just me.
No, I mean, I've heard that sentiment from other women I've asked
Okay.
who viewed Nora. I haven't seen it yet, but like from what you're saying, like the script felt very similar where I was like, this feels like gross to read.
I was gonna say I would like to read how it's like
Yeah, like I
descripted.
felt the same icky feeling, so I bet it's quite similar where I was just like, what is this even trying to communicate? Like I didn't really understand ultimately. Like I have a lot more to say and we should probably wrap it up, but like yeah, it felt very like sexist to me personally. And it felt
Yeah.
like something a man wrote clearly that felt like something I'm not a man, but like something I could have written without doing any research. Like it felt like just every cliche I've ever known about sex work.
Hmm.
Uh and it just didn't like there was no character development except like a little bit at the end. I won't give spoilers, but
Yeah.
like it just felt very like yeah, like it was very just like body focused, beauty focused, but not like it didn't move me pretty much at all.
It
So,
did feel like it was like a male fantasy to me. Like it felt like it was
yeah,
like a dude who kind of wanted to go into this idea or fantasy he had about what it was like, what like a sex worker's life would be like, and what
yeah,
if this happened. But I just keep thinking of the one scene in particular that I would think maybe other people who feel like the pacing was too long in this scene would agree with. It's like for me watching it, it was like it was going on for so long, and it's like it just felt like they kept trying to like build the tension between her and the other guy, and it's like in this way where it was sort of feeling like he was like wanting to have sex with her, I guess. I don't know, I don't want to like give stuff away, but
yeah,
it just kept going on for so long that's where to me it felt a little bit like sexist and misogynistic in a way where it's kind of like, they're like fighting over wrapping her up, and like her talking about her legs and like the way she's positioned, and she's like walking around in her underwear. And I don't know. I was just feeling, I was like, it's one thing for this to be one scene and like there was some funny moments in that scene, but for it to go on for seriously like 15 minutes, that's where I just started to feel like, okay, am I just watching some weird dude's fantasy like
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
tying up a girl with a phone cord? Like that's just like how it felt.
Yeah. And I also wanted to add, like, I saw an article, multiple articles about the marketing campaign for Honora in particular, and how maybe that kind of, I don't know how it works, but they spent like a ton of money on the marketing. And I don't know. I can like link the article in the show notes, but like, I don't know. I'm curious, like how if we could talk to someone from the Oscars, like
Yeah.
how films get that far, like what made this get there? Because I really didn't understand.
I don't even remember seeing very much marketing of it other than
Yeah,
just like the trail. I feel like I
I just,
saw
mhm.
like the poster, you know?
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, more to discuss. I would love to discuss the other one I read A Real Pain, and maybe we can read others and discuss them too. But for now, we should welcome in our guest in a
Oh
second.
yeah.
So today we are interviewing Christine Luby. She's American, I believe, but she's located in Australia, but sometimes LA. I think she like lives in multiple places. She's a director of rom-coms and other films, and Isabel Drian, we mentioned her a lot. She connected us with Christine because they're friends.
Awesome.
And yeah, this interview has been a long time coming because we have had a lot of like, well, first there were the fires, and
Right.
and then I lost internet, and we had a because we had like a
Oh yeah,
windstorm.
you had that bad windstorm. Oh my gosh, yeah, we have been
So
trying to talk to her for a while.
yeah, so hopefully third time's the charm. So let's welcome her. Yeah, welcome her in the chat.
Thank you so much, Christine. We really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us this morning.
No worries. Great to be here.
Finally, it happened.
I know, yeah, we
Made
were
it
just
happen.
saying, like,
So yeah, we were wondering, just for an introduction, yeah, like, so you're a director. How did you start directing, specifically in the rom-com? But I know you've done other genres as well. So yeah, your story.
Mhm. Yeah, sure. So yes, good morning. I mean, good afternoon or good evening, where you are turning in from or around the world. I'm in Brisbane, Australia, and it's 8 a.m. So don't mind my brain that's not working yet. I'm Christine Luby. I am a film and TV director. I've been in the industry for 18 years. I got my start as an assistant director, which is a highly logistical role that I did for about 13 years. It involves doing the schedule of the film and basically running the set. And it involves creative thinking, but it's not an inherently creative position. And then I made the move over into directing during the pandemic when the production company I'd been doing tons of work for couldn't import interstate directors, like borders were locked. And essentially they were like, okay, you've got your chance, so it's now or never. And I got a chance to direct my first feature. We pulled a White Lotus and we went and stayed and shot at a hotel, and we just like locked ourselves into this hotel and they fed us and we stayed there and we shot most of the film there. And so we had this little COVID-free bubble up there and it was fantastic. And that was for Netflix and it's called This Little Life of Mine. It was yeah. And then since then I've made 5 other features. I just finished work on my 4th rom-com of that. And I've got 3 more this year. So it's a busy year to make up for last year with the strikes and everything.
That's awesome.
I was gonna say that seems like a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot happening at once.
I'm actually kind of curious to know how you stay organized with that many. Like,
yeah, it is a lot to juggle. I'll be like doing press for one, and I'll be like, wait, what was that character's name? Oh my gosh, wait, who was my production designer? It's really it does get a little scrambled as you're prepping for one and doing press for another. And there's a little bit of overlap, but I try to not have it be too bad, and I try to never overlap more than 2. If I can. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but that's how it goes as being a working director, actually.
Yeah.
Gotta hustle.
And I'm curious, as a director, it must depend on the project, but at what point are you attached to a project? Like, is it always, it has to be at the beginning, but yeah.
Yeah, sure. So the bulk of work comes in once there's a script written and it looks like the project's going to happen. So sometimes my attachment will help get it greenlit, or in other cases, the project has been greenlit and they need to quickly attach a director because it's shooting within the next month. So I've had both scenarios. And the only other way is if I'm like deeply involved in development and I'm working from the outline and with the writers and there for every script iteration. And then the project gets a green light from there, or I can also option a script and try to get a project up myself. But pretty much all of my work I've been attached once there's been at least an outline, if not a full script, and it looks like the project's going ahead.
And did you always know you wanted to do rom-coms mostly, or did it just kind of work out that way?
It just worked out that way. I think, look, it was a genre I was naturally drawn to, and I'm a total romantic, and I love love. I love falling in love. I think it's the most magical thing. So I think it was a really natural progression. And then the company that I was working for had just done their sort of first one in the romance space, rom-com space, and then the second one, it just seemed to be, what the company was interested in focusing on. So yeah, I think it's a great genre, and there's just so much to explore. And I think that a really interesting thing came when Always Be My Maybe got released, and that sort of reignited the rom-com space. And then the other thing that was happening at the time is that there's romances and there's rom-coms, and traditionally romances had been a Hallmark venture. And then all of a sudden, everyone else wanted in the romance space. So that's when, Netflix got on the game, and Amazon and Tubi, and everyone wanted them. So there was this sort of explosion of rom-coms, and everyone needed them, and this company was making them. So it was a really natural fit at the time.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to your background actually for a moment, and I'm kind of curious, did you go to film school? Like, kind of where did your love for filmmaking even just begin? Like, were you kind of the kid, always wanting to like film home movies or anything like that?
Not at all. Not at all. I didn't go to film school. I'm not a big fan of film schools. I think maybe for like cinematography, look, who knows? Maybe I'd be a way better director if I went to film school. I don't know. I came up in the industry. So I actually trained as a dancer. That's what I went to college for. That was my first love. And I was in a dance film, and I was kind of starting to look on the other side of the camera and see what all the crew did. And there was this really rude guy yelling at everyone. And I thought, who's that? And it turned out to be the AD. And then before I know it, someone stuck a clipboard in my hand and I was ADing films inadvertently. So no, I definitely wasn't like the kid with the Super 8 camera, making videos in the backyard. It's something that I kind of stumbled into and found my love for as I went. And I think, I don't know. It's a funny progression from dance to ADing to directing. There are some crossovers there. But it's been an unusual path, and I'm a big proponent of learning on set. Like, you just when anyone's trying to figure out how to get in, I'm like, just get yourself on set. I don't care if it's as an extra, as a PA, like just get there and absorb and listen to what's going on and see how the relationships between crew members are going, and see how the director communicates effectively or not, like learn from their mistakes and just sort of get a feel for the pace of set. And depending on the budget, that can be waiting around for 3 hours in between explosion setups, or that can be shooting 10 pages a day, and just go, 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 go. So by being on a variety of sets, you really just learn how it works. And I think for directing, some people would be comfortable with this, with the director being the least experienced person on set. I'm like, nah, I want to know how everyone's jobs work. I want to, be able to communicate clearly with my heads of department and know what's up. So I think learning on set is the best way.
That's so cool. I'm also kind of curious to hear how it was for you going from like being the AD to like your first time being the director, and like, was that nerve-wracking, or what was that like?
It was. Yeah, no, it was. And there's a lot of kind of culturally Australian people kind of like to put you in a box and keep you there. So for me to break out of the AD box and enter into the director box was a big deal. And there was some judgment around that. And I just kind of rise above it and don't care. But yeah, was it scary? Yeah, it was. The most terrifying part, funnily enough, was rehearsals, because I had not done that. And I think I had a day, 3/4 of a day to rehearse. And I just kind of was still finding my way around that. And the funny thing about directing is you actually have backup in every other department except performance, so for that to be my main job, yeah, it's something that I'm always a student of, and I'll forever be learning how to speak actor. I consider myself a lifelong student of that, and finding the perfect note at the perfect time for that actor is a real art form in itself. So that's the part that I just can't get enough of.
Yeah, we were curious as well. So when you first get a script as a director, like, this is a broad question, but how do you approach it? What do you think about first? Because there's so many different departments to think about. Yeah, so we're curious about that.
When I'm deciding whether to do the script or not, or I've been hired.
We would love to hear that too. Or
yeah, I feel like those are two different questions.
Yeah, two different questions.
Sure. Yeah. So if I get sent a script to read, I'm sort of looking for things that leap off the page at me, unusual characters, something I can relate to, and one of the biggest things is strong visuals. If I have images of the film leaping off the page at me, then I know that this is a script that I can interpret and bring to life in a really unique way, and that it's something that I should be doing, essentially. So that's a big one, like evoking images for the director. And even if it's not like the production draft, I think that having making sure that your script is a good read and it's clear and it's not introducing 12 characters in the first 10 pages. And, it's a really sort of, you're creating a world from page one. And if I can see what that world is and know that I can bring something to it and interpret it, then that's going to make me say yes to the script. If it's confusing, if it's boring, if it's 120 pages long, and if I'm like skimming it, then, I'll finish the script and say, thank you, but this isn't the right script for me. So I've got to connect with it on a personal level, because otherwise I am not the right director for it. It's kind of that simple. I've got to find something in it that I can relate to, that I can interpret. And then if I've been hired, and I've always read the script before I say yes, but when I sort of start production, the best practice is to sort of read the script once, cover to cover, and take no notes and just absorb it in, and then immediately go back and read it again. And that's when you write down every note, every question, every thought that you have, and, questions for the writers, thoughts for the production designer, shot ideas, costume ideas, casting ideas. And you sort of just like everything that's going on in your brain, jot it down. And then that's your sort of launch point from there. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot to think about for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was also curious, like, what, I had a question also about chemistry. This is a little different, but how do you make sure that like rom-com leads have chemistry? Like, I guess you rehearse, and maybe that's like who you cast, right? But I don't know. Isabel and I have talked a lot about how recent rom-coms, a lot of the times it doesn't feel like the leads have that much chemistry. So I'm curious about your thoughts around that.
I have a lot of thoughts around that. So what happens very often these days is that the sales agent or the studio are essentially choosing number one and number two based on sort of sales and international pre-sales, and how they'll travel across the globe, and how they'll be received, and how popular it will be. And they think, like, this person plus this person, that has to equal great sales. And so they will often drive the casting process. So you often do get two people that haven't screen tested, and a lot of times they're offer only. So there's not a lot of like extensive testing that goes on. Coupled with, on a lot of these rom-coms, you get almost no rehearsal time. I've had as much as a week and as little as the table read as my only rehearsal time. So essentially you are trying to get on the same, they're trying to connect as quickly as they can. I'll often, if there's a child, if one of the characters has a child, I'll send them all off to do like an escape room or some sort of like group bonding challenge rather than rehearsing words, to sort of just to get to know each other. And as for the two leads, I mean, sometimes it's as simple as like, I'll have them embrace for 30 seconds before they do a take, or just look into each other's eyes, or just hold hands, or find a way to like connect on a human to human level. Because really the reality is sometimes it's 7 a.m. They barely know anything about each other, and you have to shoot the like final kiss of the film. So to manufacture that chemistry is really tricky. And to some degree they have it or they don't, and there's only so much you can do. You know, when I need help, I've brought in like a body language expert, and they could tell that like one was like leaning away from the other during the kiss, you know, and it's like, so if you reverse that, you know, and there's tricks, just like little simple things, like overlapping in frame that can tell a story. There's a great class by Film Reframed that I wish everyone should check out. And Roman, there's an expert about just like analyzing frames and understanding chemistry. And sometimes it's as simple with an over the shoulder. So if I'm way over here in frame, and sorry for the people listening at home, but I'm demonstrating on camera, if there's like a great distance between that person's shoulder and me versus like getting really close, that can tell a story. So the amount of overlap they're physically doing in frame. You can use cinematography to help build their world. You can use a narrow depth of field to make it seem like that person's the only one you know, in the world to them. So there's little tips and tricks that you can do, but if they really don't have it, or if they don't like each other, it's tricky. It's really tricky. You're using everything you can think of to try and sell that, because essentially if that doesn't work, your film doesn't work. So cast wisely.
Yeah. You're just making me think about one of my favorite holiday rom-coms, The Holiday, and how one of the like parts I love about the chemistry in that movie so much is those like long looks that, you know, Jude Law gives to her, and like all the little glances. And it kind of made me think about a question for you I have is just like, for us as writers, do you like to see those moments written into the script, you know, like he stares at her for a long time, or like his look lingers? Like sometimes, you know, I feel like we're always getting conflicting things on action lines and keeping them short, but I feel like I write that a lot, you know, like the look lingers for a moment, like he's thinking about this or that. But I'd be kind of curious to hear like your thoughts on, you know, the wordiness of that versus like it actually truly capturing the moment that feels real to the scene.
I love it when it's written into the script, because essentially time is so short. If it's not there, it might get missed. And then what you end up with is a film that just has dialogue scene, dialogue scene, dialogue scene, and you never find moments to let it breathe. And you're like, oh, I wish I had something else to cut to, but there's nothing else in the script. So I guess I'm just gonna have to go into the dialogue scene or throw some stock footage in between as a transition. So I think those are really important to have in, because essentially if it's not on the page, you know, certainly when you're shooting a film in 15 days, you're not having time to explore that. But if it's in the script, you can sort of justify taking the time. Or if it's even a new scene transition and it's scripted, I even like to script house establishers, because sometimes as it goes through the pipeline, if the assistant director hasn't seen that as a like establisher in Jen's house, you know, it won't go in the schedule, it won't get planned for, and then you're like, wait, we need house establishers, you know. So I think put everything in, obviously being conscious of page count, but I think all those little beats are incredibly important, because you're going to get to the edit and go, oh, I wish I just like, you know, had that little look, had that house establisher, had the house establisher at night. All that's important. Yeah.
Okay, I'm really glad you said that, because I feel like that's stuff that I think about a lot, and I'm sure people in our audience think about a lot too, is like, yeah, balancing like the pacing of the script and then the page count, but also feeling like it is kind of important to just get that one, like, yeah, like the establishment of like, it's nighttime and this is what's kind of this tone or the setting of the scene, but we're actually in the house for the scene. Another question I kind of had that I think about often, because I'm somebody who writes to music a lot, and I've had this thought where I wonder, when a director reads a script, do music cues or like even like beyond that, like really specific descriptions in scenes, like, do those take you out of the script? It sounds like you maybe like them, but I'm kind of curious, like, some advice you might have to us as writers for, like, if we really feel like this is the song the character is listening to, is it okay to write that in as a music cue? But then my kind of question is, what happens when you are actually going to make the movie? Do you ever sit down with the writer and like the music supervisor and you're like, all right, Isabel, we really know you want this Olivia Rodrigo song in here, but like this isn't our vision. And I don't know, I think about that sometimes.
Sure. I guess my advice would be, unless you've had, I don't know, call it 5 films produced, don't be writing any music cues in. Unlike the establishers, music is a totally separate thing. That cue could cost 50, 100, 250 grand. And essentially you're inserting these totally unrealistic expectations into the budget. Obviously, if you've got a film that's more than sort of 5 to 10 million, that's different. But if you're certainly anything under $1 million, don't put a single music mention in there. You could say something, she's listening to something like late 90s grunge music or something, you could give a tone, or you could hint, but basically know that if your budget's under sort of 5 million, it's very unlikely you're going to get rights to that song. Unless there's some sort of personal connection or something's out of copyright. Every year they announce which songs and figures go out of copyright. I think, what's he called? Popeye came out of copyright this year. And I think Mickey Mouse is at there's, every year, and they're like, oh, and there's these songs from the 30s that are now public domain. So that would be something. And there's also a difference if your character's singing the song and it has to be known that, and you don't actually hear the recording, that's cheaper because that's just master rights to the song, which your actor then performs, versus sync and master rights, which is basically whatever the fee for the song is, you're paying twice, because you're paying for the recording of the song as well as the rights to the song. So yes, whenever I just literally got a script and there's 13 scripted songs and every single one got ripped out. There's just no way. So it's like, I'd rather not go through that whole song and dance and be like, but then if you wanted to share a Spotify playlist on the side and be like, hey, here's all the songs that inspired me while I was writing it, that I'd be down for. That I think really helps to set a tone. And that could even be shared with the actors and kind of just get people in the mood. But for it to actually appear in the film, megabucks.
That's helpful though. I like the idea of even just describing like, oh, they're listening to like 90s grunge, is like, this is like the character, it's part of them. But I'm kind of curious though then, so like when there's karaoke scenes, does that mean that like, I guess if they're singing it, you're still though paying for the like right of the song for them to like sing it for 10 seconds?
Yes, so those have to be chosen in advance and very carefully. And sometimes you'll see people like choosing music libraries are really, really great. And that's what most of us are using on the sort of sub $5 million Romcom. So there's actual songs there that sound like real music that aren't just like bad sounding elevator music. So you can select one of those and do a deal with the music library and have it work that way, or you can compose an original composition as well. Those are sort of 2 workarounds.
And speaking of the script and budget and everything, are there any other mistakes that stand out to you that you want to share about like rookie mistakes that writers make when it comes to budget, or just other mistakes that maybe we should think about?
Sure. So like you'll keep your page count down, but you'll write "it rains" or "the war begins." You know what I mean? So like that's like your multi-million dollar sentence right there. So you want to try to avoid $1 million sentences by sort of understanding some of the logistics, and watch BTS of some of your favorite films, and you'll see, to get a rain machine out, that's multiple special effects technicians, that's a water tower, that's a water tank, that's clearing all that. If it's night, then you're backlighting rain. Like it's a whole thing. So try to avoid weather states whenever you can. And I'll keep returning to the sort of sub $5 million rom-com budget. Like they just don't have, it's very unlikely they're going to have the budget for that. Mind your set pieces, your big parties, your scenes with lots of extras, weddings, all those. Like I'm not saying don't have them, but be very conscious don't have 3 weddings unless that's, what your film's about. But like every time that you have extras, that's, getting them in, extra costume, extra makeup, extra catering, transport, parking considerations. There's just enormous costs that come with all of those things. And something like The War Begins, I mean, I'll just let you interpret that as you will, but like that's a big deal, and so yeah, just get as familiar as you can. I really encourage writers to become friends with ADs, because ADs are the ones that go through the script line by line. They categorize everything and then they put it into a schedule, and then they submit reports like how many extras are required, and how many days you need the hero car, and what days the dog is working. And so they can, for instance, there's things like if you're going to have a dog and it lives at someone's house, it's okay to have the dog in every scene, because the reality is that dog is booked for every day. And so if you're shooting the house for 2 days, the dog's on anyway, so you might as well have it in the scenes. But if the dog is at the park and the hotel and in 6 locations, that's where it gets expensive. But I'm like, if you're going to book the dog, have it be a character at the house. That's fine. But yeah, anytime there's a big set piece, it's a lot of money. So talk with ADs, watch BTS, and just know something simple like it's raining outside has major logistical implications.
Yeah, that's so funny you mentioned the rain. I think we've talked about this before on the podcast, that I think growing up as just a viewer, I was like, oh, it just happens to be pouring rain the day that they're shooting. Right. Movie magic.
Yeah, never happens that way. Oh, I have one more thing as well. Yeah. Naming your scene descriptions as different things. So it's like Lucy's house, Lucy's bedroom, Lucy's parents' house. Like just pick one name for Lucy's house and just make sure that all of your scene headings sort of match, because there's nothing, because essentially you can auto import, a lot of crew will auto import the script, and when there's 5 different names for the same location or even slightly different, it thinks it's different locations, and it's just a nightmare. So I'm trying to like train every writer I know, just like make sure they're all the same. Yeah.
So are you saying that it should just be like Lucy's house, or should it be specific to like Lucy's bedroom, or is it like Lucy's house and the actual line is Lucy's in her bedroom?
Lucy's, like, so if you have Lucy's house, just try to always call it like Lucy's house, and then it could be -bedroom, Lucy's house, or exterior Lucy's house, but don't call it like if it's actually her parents' house or her boyfriend's house, like Lucy's boyfriend's house, Lucy's parents' house. It's when it's like the same physical location is called 4 different things. Okay. That's when it's really annoying. But you can, also big fan of like Lucy's house, living room / kitchen, you can be specific as long as it always starts with Lucy's house, because when it auto imports, it's going to see the Lucy and group all those locations together. That's really boring, nerdy stuff, but it really does matter. Yeah. And you'll have like crew cursing at you because it's a nightmare. So, yeah.
I like it, but now I'm kind of wondering, like, how, like, when you get a script for the first time, how do you kind of turn that off in your mind to read a script and like not think about the budget, not think about all that, and just like, like I'm just here for the story and to see this. But I imagine that might be kind of hard to like not like be reading and enjoying it, and then all of a sudden it's like it's a rainstorm, and you're like, oh no, this is gonna cost so much.
Yeah. I mean, generally I'll have an idea of the budget, and so I can instantly tell if there's things that are way out of the budget, like 13 songs. I was like, well, those are all probably going. Maybe we'll have 2, maybe none. It's that sort of thing. It's tricky. And it's certainly when I'm watching films, I've completely spoiled the experience of watching films. How did they get that shot? Oh, I wonder how many people that took. Constantly dissecting them. So it is hard to shut your brain off. And I can't sort of not read a script and be thinking about budget. And I think what I see a lot of first time writers, a mistake I see them making is just writing something that's, over 5 million. And the chances of getting produced as a, newbie writer, it's just so unlikely. So I'm saying to everyone all the time, I'm like, write like sub 1 million, one location, write like a contained thriller or a contained horror, or, yes, you can go for a rom-com, but like you can't have any big set pieces, because no one is going to trust you. From a producer's perspective, no one is going to trust you. You're an unproven writer. So they're not going to throw, yes, we're going to put your $5 million film into production. Like, if you make one, then you're a produced writer, and then you're less of a risk to hire next time. And then you can climb up budget levels from there. But I see a lot of some writers and especially directors like setting this very high bar and being like, well, it's my first, so it has to be perfect. And I'm always telling them, like, you're going to make mistakes. That's not the point. Perfection is not the point of that. So like, just get one out of the way. Then you're not a first time filmmaker anymore, because so few of us can be auteur directors. You know, if you want to be a working director or working writer and have things like produced every single year, you have to just, it's to some degree about quantity and over quality. And I know that's a controversial statement, but it runs on the board. And if someone can IMDb you and see that you've got this whole list, that is so much more impressive than like, but was every frame perfect? It's like, it's not going to be perfect. Every first time filmmaker makes mistakes, and that's how you learn and practice your craft. But just get the first one made and then you'll know more.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's good advice. We talk a lot on the podcast about how to, like, for writers, it is really useful to understand how to think like a director, how to think like a producer, just to like help us understand, like, you know, if we want these movies to get made, like we can't, like, we don't want to necessarily like stop ourselves from in the creative process, but we also have to like understand, like you're saying, like, you know, you can't have this like massive scene or like this massive, all this like stuff happening in your first movie that you're ever trying to like pitch and get made. And I think it's kind of helpful to kind of ground us a little bit to think through, like, you know, our first movie that we're trying to sell or that we're trying to shop around doesn't have to be this like super big, high budget one, that like we can work towards that in our careers. But I like the idea of starting with something that's a little bit more manageable and maybe easier to get moving.
Yeah, totally. And I'll just add to that. For producers, it's about mitigating their risk. And so that's why it's so hard for writer directors to get their first film up, because they're doubling their risk. You're an unproven writer and you're an unproven director, and you're going to be so attached to the idea that getting studio notes, you might be really difficult to deal with because you're so close to it, you know. And then if you're editing as well, I mean, sometimes it works great. I mean, Coralie Farge and The Substance, you know, she produced, wrote, directed, and edited, and she got her way. You know, and it's a tour de force, but to be coming in as your first project like that, it's really risky. And I've watched some writers wait 10 years and never get anything up, or 20 years waiting for someone to choose them. And it's like, just go and write the contained thriller, just go and direct the micro budget thing. And then, you know, in the eyes of the producers, like, you're a proven director, you're a produced writer. It's so much more likely they'll hire you for your second one once you've done your first.
Yeah. And my question follow up for that is, you know, we're all trying to break in, or a lot of our listeners are, like, so we have a complete script and we think it's the right budget that isn't going to freak out a producer or director. What would your recommendation be at that point?
So yeah, once you've got your screenplay in a pretty good place, I'd recommend sending it to a place like Screenplay Readers, and they will give you some comprehensive notes on your script and give you a pass or a recommend. And it's very hard to get a recommend from them, but their notes are so comprehensive. Like, I would really just recommend listening to them and integrating those notes, because they are completely unbiased. Don't send it to your friends and family. They're going to be like, it's great, love. You know, you don't want that. You want sort of to be critiqued and to be like, oh, shoot, you know what? The third act really isn't working, and it does lag in the second act. And that is actually pretty incongruous for the character, whatever it is. But like, really listen to the notes as much as you can, and don't be afraid to kill your darlings. I think that's, again, another mistake, that a rookie error, is that people just think it's perfection and they just don't want to take notes. And the reality is, everyone gets notes. It's part of the process, and that revision is really important. Writing is rewriting. So really take those notes on board. Then once you feel like you've got it in a really good place, if you have representation, fantastic. They will help you get it out and start pitching it. If you don't have representation, you can go direct to directors. I've had a number of writers approach me and, you know, with a log line, and ask if I'd like to read their script from the log line. And sometimes they will, and sometimes I'll option it. And then the way I say, you know, kind of pitch it to them is like, well, it's better to have two of us pimping out your script than just one of us. So you might as well offer it up. But yeah, look, it's tough once you have the finished script. Get it read. Don't be too precious with it. You know, don't be sending out NDAs and watermarking it. It's like, if you're an unproduced writer, you know, like, just don't be that precious with it. I know during the pandemic, was it even you guys like talking about putting your log lines out on Twitter and stuff? Like, I think that's great. I think
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a part of the process. You have to get people interested and intrigued.
Yeah.
And if you're holding it so tight to your chest, no one's going to read it.
Right. Yeah.
I just had a quick question. I'm curious just because I've never really talked to a director about this. So like as screenwriters, we're told a page is a minute. Do you find that to be true in the end result, that the script length equals the length of the film?
Look, more or less, it's a good sort of general rule to go by. If it's all dialogue, it can be quite a bit quicker, and you can save a dialogue outline and time yourself and see where it's sitting. So if you have a 5-page scene and it's 100% dialogue, that's probably not going to be 5 minutes. That might be closer to, I don't know, 3. So what happens from a production stance is that the script will go to the script supervisor, and they'll actually time the whole film, and they'll read the lines out, and they'll give you sort of a runtime. And then that, I find, is a more accurate representation of where your script is at. So I think page count wise, especially again, sub 5 million, like 90, 95 is a really great place. I actually get excited to open up a script and be like, sweet, it's 95 pages. That's awesome. When it gets over 100, I'm like, oh God, this is going to take a minute, and I'm just going to be cutting it on the edit room floor. And then further to that, companies like Lifetime have an extremely specific, like to the second runtime that you have to hit. And every network's a little bit different. So it's good to know if the film has been pre-sold, it's great to know what their runtime is and then tailor the script to that, because otherwise scenes just end up on the cutting room floor.
I was just going to say the brutalist, like movies that are made today are so long, and I really don't like that.
Yeah. And sometimes either producers or the studio want extra runtime because then they can sort of have their say on the edit and cut things that aren't working. It's nice to have a little bit of wiggle room, but I don't like to have too much, because then you're like, oh, we shot 6 scenes that day. I could have just shot 4 and, done a great job on those 4. So that's my personal preference.
Could you tell us a little bit maybe about, you were saying before, when you're reading a script, like what really stands out to you? Like, what kind of stories are you drawn to, or like what kind of scripts are you finding yourself wanting to do more projects on, or is there anything that you haven't seen yet that you're like hoping to find?
Love a dance film, waiting for the perfect dance film to land in my inbox. A la Marvelous Mrs. Maisel's Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. I mean, I just think the integration of dance is so extraordinary. There's an episode of a show called Blind Spotting. There's 2 series that are named very similar, but they basically integrated dance in the most spectacular way I've ever seen. And it went into this dream sequence, and they used dance to step in a place that words could never. So I think it's a really powerful tool, and people are so familiar with it in this day and age. Like when I was in it, people were like, what is contemporary dance? Is that ballet? Like, don't know what you're talking about. Now it's on billboards and advertisements and, phone ads, and there's competitions and everyone, and TikTok, of course, like everyone just has this language that they know that dance speaks. And so I think integrating it into film and TV is a pretty special thing that we can do at this moment. That's not sort of out there anymore. So always looking for that. Love to do something period. I'm super interested in female-driven action. And other than that, sort of just leveling up rom-coms, elevated rom-coms, I think are really of the moment, and always keen for more.
I love dance movies. I feel like there aren't enough. Like Save the Last Dance and, Dirty Dancing and Dirty Dancing Havana Nights. Like I grew up with those and I love them so much.
I was going to say, I watched Center Stage like a few months ago, I want to say, and I was like, oh, this movie, it's just so good.
So good.
Yeah.
There's an Australian show. What was it called? That is it's kind of a coming of age dance. Is it Dance Academy?
Dance Academy.
Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
I was so into that. And I was like a little older than the demographic when I saw it, but I was into it.
So good.
Yeah. So do you primarily make films in Australia or in the US? Are there any, like big differences?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I've shot, of my 6, 1 shot in Ireland, 1 shot in Connecticut, and then the rest have shot in Australia. So there are some differences for sure. Namely the shoot day, you have 12-hour days in the States and 10-hour days in places like UK, Ireland, and Australia, which is fantastic because you actually get home and can have dinner with your family and have a better work-life balance. And people really love coming to other countries because there isn't the tradition of going into crazy overtime. I mean, even Game of Thrones shot 10-hour days where they could, I understand. So that's a big key difference. And then there's some things like the G&E department is separated into grips and electrics a bit more here, and who does what in that department is a little different. We don't really have unions in the same way that the States does. So there's no Teamsters here, and you can actually achieve quite a bit more on a budget here. Not to mention if it's American money, then the exchange rate kind of feeds into that. Plus there's a tradition like France of government financed films here, and tax rebates and location offsets. So it's quite a great place to shoot. Plus we have incredible locations in Australia. So yeah, I will say that I felt sometimes like I achieved more in a 10-hour day when everyone was super focused in another country than I did in like a 12-hour day in the States, where people are kind of used to like these long days and maybe even looking for overtime and like didn't see camera for an hour and a half after, crew call, that sort of thing. And you're like, come on, let's go. So yeah, but I also love being the director that you can kind of drop in any country and I'll figure it out, even if I don't have an existing relationship with crew. You can just, pop me anywhere and I'll figure it out and do my best to make a great film. I think there's that adaptability is quite important.
Yeah, Australia is such a good rom-com location. I mean, of course, Anyone But You, who we interviewed the writer, that showcased Australia so wonderfully. And then even going back to like Mary-Kate and Ashley, like Our Lips Are Sealed.
Our Lips Are Sealed.
Put Australia on the map for me. So, really good.
Totally. Yeah, for your destination rom-coms, can't beat it.
Yeah, love a destination rom-com, so good.
But now, would that be a red flag though? Reading a script, like seeing like a international location, like page one, it's like exterior Australia.
Yeah.
Or would that be like, oh, actually, we can get more done if we film this here?
Yeah, it's certainly if the script is meant for Italy, then it's an Italian project that would be shot there that would take advantage of the rebates. You kind of tailor it to it. So it's not a bad idea as a writer to search which, like Malta's a hotspot right now because they've just come up with a new tax incentive. So it's not a terrible idea to research which countries have the biggest tax incentive, because that's going to be actually a green flag to producers who just heard about Malta and went, oh, actually, I'd love to do a destination rom-com in Malta. Oh, here's a great script that's set there, but I'd really encourage you to like maybe go there or really, really research it, so it doesn't just feel like an American production placed in another country.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was curious as well, how many takes per scene? I mean, it might depend on the budget and the film, but how many takes do you get per scene as a director?
Well, it's about how you want to use up your shoot day. So in a 10-hour day, you basically take the amount of pages you're trying to shoot and divide the two, and that kind of gives you a rough idea. Like it sort of comes down to math in a way, or like certainly how long you have per scene. During, a lot of rom-coms, a lot of like Hallmark rom-coms will shoot in 12 days. All of mine have shot in 15 days, which is a very tight schedule. So you might only get, if you're doing a wide, like try to just do the wide once, or you can even like top and tail the wide. You just shoot the beginning and the ending and you cut out the 5 pages of dialogue in the middle, because you're not going to cut to that in the edit, which then might buy you maybe 3 or 4 takes. I'd say around 3 as a general, roughie. But if you're smart with your wide shot and you don't make sure the wide is perfect in every way, then that would allow you to go a few more times in your close-ups or your mids. So it's about using your time really wisely and designing coverage that's purposefully conscious of time so that you can maximize takes for performance. And sometimes you get one and you have 15 minutes left for the day and you have to make your shoot day. So you have to just throw your shot list out the window and figure it out, change the blocking, figure out how you're going to do it in one shot. Because the reality is that most of these films, sub 5 million, are not having reshoots and pickups. And, oh, sorry, we just dropped that scene today. Like, you have to figure it out in the day. And that's part of what makes a trustworthy director, one that completes the call sheet and makes their day without driving the production into overtime and over budget.
Do you usually have the writer on set?
No, that's more, I haven't ever. They've come for visits, but no. And I think it's a practice that's great and should be encouraged. Because things do come up all the time, or a location changes, or an actor, wants to rework a line. I think it would be a great support to have. I've never personally, but I think, especially in TV, it's incredibly important that writers come to set. And I think that is how we train the next generation of showrunners. And the fact that so many TV shows aren't inviting even baby writers or writers just for their episode to come. That's not a good practice for training the next generation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's sad that writers are just at the bottom most of the time, but yeah, maybe it'll change in time.
I hope so. I mean, you can always ask, and you can always ask to come for a few days. I've heard writers flying themselves to London to be on episodes of big budget television shows just so they can be there and see sort of it all coming to life. And I think it's a great practice for writers to see how production runs, but the budget just needs to catch up with that.
So I emailed Christine about this, but basically, I don't know if you would call it scamming. I'm curious what you would call it. But I received this email from a producer, and I immediately went to his IMDb. He had impressive credits to me, farther along than me. It wasn't like some random person on Twitter. And his email said that he wanted to know if I had any attachments to this script that he'd somehow learned about, because I do post about my scripts, so it's not like he hacked into my computer or anything.
Yeah.
And he was like, let's set up a call. So we had a call, and I was really excited because I thought perhaps it meant, he didn't have the script, but for context, I'd had a general with someone else who had the script. And I thought perhaps they'd exchanged the script in some way. I don't know. But I think, so he, on the call, said, I'm really interested in your rom-com idea. It sounds great. If we were to work together, you would pay $7,500 to try to get actors attached. And then we kind of proceed from there. So I was hoping for a shopping agreement or, an option or him requesting the script if he didn't even have it. I wasn't really sure. And he also wouldn't tell me where he learned about the project, which I found very strange.
Yeah.
So anyway, nothing came out of that. I was the more I processed after, I was this is so sketchy sounding to ask a writer to put money into a project at that stage to get casting. So yeah, the more I thought about it, the kind of more upset and angry I got. I felt like it was kind of I don't even know the right adjective, but really playing on, fledgling writers' hopes, So I was curious what your thoughts about that are.
That's evil, and I'm so sorry that happened to you. Yeah, that's absolutely unacceptable. It's also just not how it works either. I mean, they should be asking, a meeting is great. And I'd encourage, some writers will only send scripts if they have a Zoom meeting with someone in advance, which I think is a good practice just to suss them out. But first and foremost, it has to be about the script, and them reading the script and connecting with it, and them deciding to champion it and try to make attachments. That's literally their job. It's definitely not the writer's job to attach actors. And, you have to be best friends with some A-lister. It's just not how it works. So it's an interesting trend about packaging. And sometimes, packaging, if you're very well connected and you've had many scripts optioned, then you can you attach a director, and then that director attaches cast, and you can kind of bring a producer or production company a package that's already packaged, and maybe someone has access to private equity. Like that's one way to package something, but it's not the writer's job, and certainly never, they should be paying you, not the other way around. And I would encourage a shopping agreement over a straight option, because there could be a situation where, say, a studio then wants to pick up and they've paid you $1 for your option, and then but the script's already optioned, so then the studio doesn't have to pay you for your script. So yes, I think that's where entertainment lawyers come in very handy. And even if it's your first one, employing one to look over your contract is incredibly important. And following your gut. There's a lot of scammers and people looking to take advantage of an industry that's really hard to get into. And so, yeah, anyone that asks you to pay money or anything that seems off, ask other writers, just sort of see what they think and avoid like the plague. And know that you don't have to send them, as much as they've said, like, be generous with your script. If someone's not super legit, and if they can't present sort of a pathway for your film to get made, then I would try to avoid it whenever possible, because it's dodgy and you can be taken advantage of. And, the next thing you've signed a contract and you're being paid a really low sum for your script that you've spent 5 years on. So, yeah. I'm sorry that happened.
Yeah. I'm glad we're sharing this. Yeah, thank you. I'm over it mostly now, but I think I was so hopeful, because it's pretty rare when a producer or a director or anyone reaches out to me about my work. Like, usually I'm the one reaching out, querying. So, it was very disappointing, but I'm glad we're talking about it, because I do want to warn other writers about this situation. So maybe that they can kind of stand up for themselves better, even in the moment, and say that that's not ethical. But I was just so shocked that I was like, oh, well, like, think about it. And then he never even followed up. Like, I don't know how many people he's talking to, but like, yeah, obviously I'm never going to say yes to something like that. But I was just kind of like flabbergasted, honestly. Let's transition to rapid fire questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now preparing for rapid fire questions.
So the first question is just, what is your favorite rom-com and why?
I'm going to go with Pretty Woman, because it's probably the first one that I saw at too young of an age. And there's so many iconic images from that are just seared into my brain. And it's just the ultimate Cinderella story. So yeah, Pretty Woman.
That's great.
That's good. Do you have a favorite rom-com trope?
I do. I love an unusual meet cute. I think it's important to mix it up. And often that's it's something I'd encourage all writers to do, is think of, it doesn't just have to be the coffee spill or the paper spilling and they both get down and their hands touch. It's like, don't do that. Think of anything else. Love an unusual rom-com. And then just nailing the final kiss is really, for a director, is incredibly important. If that doesn't feel this like a cathartic release, and what your audience has been, waiting the whole film to see, you got to nail that final kiss on camera.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite rom-com outfits that you've seen in your films or in other films that you admire?
A friend just showed me Wanderlust for the first time, which is the Jennifer Aniston, Paul Rudd. I think it's kind of a rom-com, sort of like road trip, hippie commune sort of film. And every Jennifer Aniston outfit in that, I was like, I need to go to Free People and buy this immediately. She's got this like poncho boots combo that's like, oh my God, she looks amazing. And even before she's sort of at the hippie commune in her New York City work mode, I'm like, need that, want that. Every outfit in that is great.
Do you have a favorite line or moment from a rom-com?
This is probably a bit anti-rom-com, and I don't know if I'm allowed to swear because it is a bit of a curse word. So
you can.
So the one that sticks out is from the rom-com Puppy Love with Lucy Hale and Grant Gustin. And Grant's character calls someone a bitch pig, and I just found it the most hilarious thing ever. So that's the line that's just like seared in my brain.
It's funny you mentioned that one, because I've mentioned that movie multiple times on this show, because I think it's honestly one of the only rom-coms there's a small list, but of ones that I rewatched from recent years. I thought that one was excellent. I love that one.
That actually kind of goes into the next question. Because the next question is, are there any rom-coms that you've seen recently that you recommend?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I feel like I'm always watching them, and yeah, look, I would say everyone should be watching Always Be My Maybe. I just think it's sort of like it's the thing that kicked off this whole thing. And I will point out a rom-com, actually a Hallmark film, and it's the kind of highest, it's the most elevated Hallmark rom-com I've seen, which is called Romance in Style. And they just sort of nailed it and really went against many sort of more formulaic styles. So if you're looking to write sort of G-rated Hallmark rom-coms, check out that one, Romance in Style.
If money didn't matter, yeah, what's a rom-com you'd love to make? I think we kind of touched on this before, a dance one maybe, but what would you want to make?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know, something like Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist, but period. Something like that.
Ooh.
Yeah. Anything 20s, maybe
Amadeus
20s swing
Zoe's
dance. Right.
Yeah. Ooh, that'd be really
fun. I like that. So what are you working on now? Like what projects are on the horizon, and how can people stay in touch with you and hear about when your next movies are coming out and everything?
Yeah, so I'm in post on my 6th feature, which is called You Always, which has been announced. So I can talk about it a little bit. That's starring Adrian Grenier from Entourage, and that'll be out sometime later this year. So just finishing up on that one. And then I'm in prep, as you say in the States, for my next film. And I've got 2 more lined up after that, including a creature feature, which is a very new genre for me that I'm very excited about. So it's going to be a busy year. Yeah. And people can follow me on my Instagram, which is just Christine Luby.
Awesome. We'll put it all in the show notes.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Jinx.
And I was going to say, we said that.
You can go, Isabel.
Oh, no, I was just going to say thank you. I felt like this was super, there's a lot of really good like tips for writers. And I think that's going to help us all both be like better writers, and then also kind of feel more confident in navigating, what to do when we have our scripts ready.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. We rise together.
This has been an episode of When Isabel Met Aviva. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to stay up to date with our episodes, please subscribe. Bonus points if you leave us a positive review. You can follow us on Instagram at whenisabelmetaviva and on Bluesky at whenisabelmetaviva.
You can also find our personal profiles on Instagram and Bluesky too. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or need any advice about your screenwriting career, or if you just want to obsess over rom-coms with us.
And don't forget to watch and write as many rom-coms as possible.